The planet of Olara was a desolate place. Vast stretches of rocky, barren land with little to offer except a lonely outpost that stood like a beacon in the darkness. It was humanity's last foothold on this distant world, a planet at the edge of a galaxy that was slowly being consumed by a growing alien empire. The people here were not warriors, nor were they diplomats. They were scientists, engineers, and technicians. Their job was simple: keep the communication systems alive, make sure the human colonies were connected, and hope that reinforcements would arrive before the inevitable invasion. Lieutenant John Jack Harper sat alone in the small maintenance bay, surrounded by the hum of machinery. His hands moved automatically, adjusting circuits, checking connections, and making sure the transmitter would work once more. It had been a long day, and the familiar task of repairing the communication equipment was a welcome distraction. Jack wasn't one for excitement. He preferred the quiet moments, the routine. The sooner he finished, the sooner he could return to his quarters and relax. His attention was focused on the transmitter, but something made him pause. There was a shift in the air, a strange pressure that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He turned, half expecting to see another technician or maybe a crew member checking on him. Instead, standing in the doorway, was a woman. She was unlike anyone Jack had ever seen. She was tall, nearly a head above him, with skin that shimmered like polished marble. Her eyes were a deep, almost glowing blue, and her silver hair fell in waves around her shoulders. She wore a form of armor Jack didn't recognize, sleek and elegant, yet clearly designed for combat. But what caught him the most was the way she carried herself. There was a grace to her, a sense of power that was impossible to ignore. The woman stood silently, for a moment watching him. Jack opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was still trying to process what was happening when she finally broke the silence. "That's my husband," she said, her voice calm and certain, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Jack blinked, feeling a wave of confusion wash over him. "Excuse me?" The woman stepped forward, her eyes locking onto his. She didn't seem surprised by his bewilderment. In fact, she looked almost pleased, as though she had been expecting his reaction. "You are my husband," she repeated, her tone unshakable. "I've been waiting for you." Jack stood frozen, unsure of what to do. This couldn't be real. He was just a technician, stationed on a barely habitable planet, far from Earth and any kind of family life. There was no way. This woman was talking about him. He had never met her, had never even seen anyone like her before. "I think you're mistaken," Jack said slowly, his mind racing. "I'm just here to fix the transmitter." The woman smiled softly, as though she were amused by his confusion. "No, John Harper, you are my husband. You are the one I've been searching for." Jack's heart skipped a beat. She knew his name, but how? He had never seen her before, never heard of anyone like her. Was she some sort of enemy agent? A spy sent by the alien empire to confuse and disorient him? But no, there was something about her that didn't fit. She didn't seem like an enemy. She seemed too calm, too assured in her presence. "I don't understand," Jack said, shaking his head. "I don't even know who you are." "My name is Lyra," she said softly, her eyes never leaving his. "I am from the star system Vavara, a world far from here. But our fates are intertwined, John Harper. You were always meant to be with me." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. There was something deeply unsettling about her words. But more than that, there was a strange pull, something that made his chest tighten. He didn't know her, but somehow she felt familiar. It was as if a part of him recognized her, even though his mind screamed that it didn't make sense. "I think you've got the wrong person," Jack said, trying to steady his breath. "I'm not anyone special. I'm just here to fix a transmitter and keep the communication systems running. That's it." Lyra's expression softened. No, you are more than that, John Harper. You are the one who was promised to me. The one who will change everything. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. The way she spoke, the certainty in her words. It was as though she truly believed every word she was saying. But how? How could someone like her think that about someone like him? For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the hum of the machines around them the only sound. Jack felt the weight of her gaze, as if she were studying him, trying to understand him. He opened his mouth to speak again, but before he could say anything, Lyra took a step forward, her presence overwhelming. "You don't believe me now," she said gently. "But you will. The bond between us is not something that can be easily broken. You will remember. You will understand." Jack took a step back, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, but I don't—" "You will," she interrupted, her voice firm. "And when you do, you will know that we are meant to be together. Nothing can change that." 1,000 questions raced through Jack's mind, but one thing was clear. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. This woman, Lyra, wasn't just a stranger. She wasn't just some delusional alien. She was something far more significant. And whether he liked it or not, his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Jack took a deep breath, his mind struggling to make sense of it all. This wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. Lyra's words, the certainty in her eyes, they were real. And somehow, whether he understood it or not, Jack was about to become part of a story much larger than his own. For now, though, there was one thing he knew for sure. He had to fix the transmitter. But with Lyra standing before him, claiming to be his wife, that task suddenly felt like the least of his worries. Jack couldn't focus on the transmitter anymore. His hands trembled as he tried to adjust the wires, but it felt as though the whole room was closing in on him. Lyra's words echoed in his mind, replaying over and over like a broken record. "You are my husband," she had said. But how could that be? He didn't remember her, and he certainly wasn't married to an alien. He was just a technician on a remote outpost, far from Earth and far from anything that resembled a normal life. But something inside him, some part of his mind, told him that Lyra wasn't lying. There was an odd pull in his chest, a connection he couldn't explain. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. How could he feel like he knew her when he had never seen her before? For hours, Jack sat in his small quarters, turning over every detail in his head. He had tried to convince himself that it was all just some sort of strange mistake. But the more he thought about it, the more the feeling grew. He had never been a believer in fate or destiny. But what if there was something to Lyra's words? What if the connection she spoke of was real? Finally, he decided to find her. He needed answers, even if they didn't make sense. He had to know more about her and what she meant when she said they were meant to be together. When he reached the observation deck, he found her standing by the large windows, gazing out into the starry expanse. Her expression was calm, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes, as if she were waiting for something, or someone. "Lyra," Jack called softly, his voice betraying the uncertainty he still felt. She turned to face him, her eyes lighting up as she saw him approach. "You came," she said, her voice full of warmth. "I knew you would." Jack stood there for a moment, not knowing where to begin. "I don't understand," he said at last. "How could you say that I'm your husband? I don't remember you. I've never even met you before." Lyra's gaze softened, and she took a step closer. "I understand that this is confusing for you," she said gently. "But the bond between us is something ancient. It goes beyond time, beyond space. We were once together in another life, long before this one. Our souls are connected, and we are destined to be with each other." Jack shook his head, struggling to wrap his mind around what she was saying. I'm just a regular guy. I'm not special. I'm not destined for anything. I'm just here to keep the systems running, that's all." Lyra smiled, her expression filled with a kind of quiet understanding. "You don't believe me yet, but you will. There are memories inside you, Jack. Memories of us. They're just buried, waiting for you to remember." "Memories?" Jack asked, feeling a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. "What kind of memories?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, as though considering how much to share. Then she said, "When you first came to Olara, you were only a technician, yes. But your arrival here wasn't by accident. It was the first step in a much larger plan. You and I are connected in ways you can't yet comprehend. Your role here, your purpose, it's far greater than you realize." Jack's head was spinning. A part of him wanted to dismiss everything Lyra was saying as some sort of wild fantasy, but the other part, the part that felt that strange pull when he was around her, couldn't ignore it. He could feel the truth of her words deep down, even if he didn't fully understand them. "Why didn't I remember any of this before?" Jack asked, his voice quieter now. "Why can't I remember any of this connection you're talking about?" Lyra's eyes softened with sympathy. "The memories were hidden, Jack. They were locked away to protect you, to protect both of us. The empire we belong to, the one that rules the galaxy, wanted to keep you safe, keep you from remembering who you truly are. But now, the time has come for you to remember." Jack felt a chill run down his spine at the mention of the empire. "What do you mean, the empire? What does that have to do with me?" Lyra's expression darkened slightly, and she glanced toward the stars, as if searching for something far off in the distance. "The empire I speak of is a vast and powerful force. They rule over countless worlds, and they have been watching you, Jack. Watching you for a long time." Jack took a step closer, his curiosity growing. "Why would they be watching me? What do they want with me?" "The empire is not just about conquering worlds," Lyra explained, her voice filled with quiet intensity. "It is about control, about power. And you, John Harper, are the key to their future. You are the one who can either destroy their empire or help them expand it beyond their wildest dreams. The choice is yours." Jack's mind raced. He had never signed up for any of this. He had been sent to Olara to fix a transmitter, to keep Earth's communication lines open. But now, everything was changing. His life, his purpose, was shifting in ways he couldn't fully grasp. "And you?" Jack asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. "Where do you fit into all of this?" Lyra met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. "I am here to guide you, Jack. I am here to help you remember, to help you understand your role. And I am here because you are my husband, the one I have waited for." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He didn't know how to respond. This was all so overwhelming, so impossible to believe. And yet, a part of him, the part that was drawn to Lyra in a way he couldn't explain, knew that she was telling him the truth. For the first time in his life, Jack felt like he was standing on the edge of something monumental, something that could change everything. The choices before him were immense, and the weight of them pressed down on his shoulders. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was clear. His life, as he knew it, was over. And something much bigger, much more dangerous, was just beginning. The days following his conversation with Lyra were a blur for Jack. His world, once so simple and routine, had been upended in ways he could barely understand. He found himself questioning everything. The transmitter that he had been sent to fix now seemed like the least of his problems. Lyra's words lingered in his mind, swirling with a strange sense of foreboding. "You are the key," she had said. "You are the one who can either destroy the empire or help them expand it." Jack couldn't shake the feeling that everything was connected, that his presence on Olara, his role as a simple technician, was part of something much larger. But he still couldn't fully grasp what that something was. Lyra had told him that the Empire was watching him, that his every move had been tracked since he arrived on the planet. He had brushed it off as paranoia, but the more he thought about it, the more the pieces began to fit together. Why had he been chosen for this post? Why had Earth sent him to such a remote place with no backup, no reinforcements? Could it be that they knew something he didn't? Was he really a pawn in a much bigger game? One evening, while Jack was alone, in the outpost's control room, staring out at the dark, endless horizon, Lyra came to him again. This time she didn't smile. There was no warmth in her eyes, only determination and urgency. "Jack, we don't have much time," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "The Empire is coming for you. They know you're here and they're preparing to move against us." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, move against us? Who exactly is coming for me?" Lyra looked around as though making sure no one else was nearby. "The Empire's agents have already infiltrated Olara. They've been waiting for the right moment to strike. The higher-ups on this planet, the ones in charge of the communication systems, they're not just humans. Some of them are spies for the Empire. They've been manipulating everything from the start." Jack felt a cold chill creep up his spine. He thought back to the days he had spent working alongside the other crew members, the faces that seemed so familiar. Had they been lying to him all along? Were some of them secretly working for the enemy? "They'll come for you first," Lyra continued, her gaze unwavering. "Once they have you, they'll use you to force the rebellion into submission. They'll force your people to bend to their will. Or worse, they'll destroy everything." Jack swallowed hard. The weight of Lyra's words pressed down on him like a stone. "What can we do? How do we stop them?" Lyra stepped forward, her expression serious. "We fight back. There's no other way. We need to expose their agents and destroy their plans before they can execute them. But to do that, we'll need to act quickly and carefully. We cannot allow them to find us before we're ready." Jack's mind raced. He had never signed up for any of this. He was just a technician, a simple man who had spent his life fixing equipment and maintaining systems. But now, suddenly, he was thrust into a war he never asked for. A war against a powerful alien empire that sought to control everything. And he, Jack Harper, was the key to its future. "Where do we start?" Jack asked, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. Lyra's lips curled into a determined smile. "First, we need to gather information. We need to find out who is working for the Empire and who can be trusted. I've been working with a group of resistance fighters who are already here on Olara. They've been gathering intel on the Empire's agents and their plans." Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of what they had to do. "And how do we contact them?" Lyra held up a small device, no larger than a palm, with a series of glowing buttons on it. "This will allow us to contact the resistance network. We've been using it in secret, keeping our communications hidden from the Empire spies. But now we need to act. We need their help, and we need it fast." She handed the device to Jack, who took it with a mixture of apprehension and resolve. The device felt heavy in his hands, not because of its weight, but because of the responsibility it represented. He wasn't just a technician anymore. He was part of something much bigger, something that could change the fate of entire civilizations. The two of them moved quickly through the outpost, taking care to avoid any prying eyes. Jack couldn't help but notice the subtle tension in the air. Everyone seemed on edge. The usual calm atmosphere was gone, replaced by a sense of fear and uncertainty. Lyra led him to a hidden room deep within the building, a small, secure space where they could make contact with the resistance without being detected. Once inside, Lyra activated the device. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of encrypted codes and symbols. Jack watched in silence as Lyra typed in a series of commands. After a few moments, a voice crackled through the device, faint but clear. "Lyra," the voice said, "is it time?" "Yes," Lyra replied, her tone urgent. "We have to move now. The Empire knows about Jack. They know he's here, and they're preparing to strike. We need to expose their agents and disrupt their plans before it's too late." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Understood. We'll mobilize the resistance and begin working from the inside. We'll send reinforcements to your location immediately." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He had never imagined he'd be at the center of something so dangerous, so important. But here he was, caught in a web of intrigue and conflict that he couldn't fully understand. He had no choice now but to see it through. As the transmission ended, Lyra turned to him. "We've done what we can for now. The resistance will begin their work, and will continue to gather more information." "But Jack," she hesitated for a moment, her gaze hardening. "The Empire will stop at nothing to get to you. You have to stay alert. Stay sharp." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle over him. His life had been simple once. But now, nothing would ever be the same. He was no longer just a technician. He was a target, a key player in a galactic conflict that was larger than anything he had ever known. And the Empire? They were coming. The days following their first contact with the Resistance were tense. Every moment felt like a countdown, as if time itself was working against them. Jack found himself moving through the outpost with a heightened sense of awareness, watching for any sign of trouble. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire was closer than ever, and every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Lyra had become his constant companion. She was always nearby, her presence comforting, but also a reminder of the impossible situation they were in. As much as Jack tried to focus on the task at hand, he couldn't ignore the connection he felt to her. It was there, like a spark in the back of his mind, something he couldn't explain. She was the woman who had claimed him as her husband, a title he hadn't earned yet, but somehow it felt right. Their relationship was complicated. Jack couldn't deny the bond he felt with Lyra, but there were parts of him that resisted. His life had always been simple, fixing transmitters, keeping the communication systems running, living a quiet existence. Now he was thrust into a world of war, intrigue, and ancient prophecies. And at the center of it all was Lyra, the woman, who claimed to be his destined partner. One evening, as Jack sat alone in his quarters, staring at the stars outside his window, Lyra came to him again. She looked different this time, her face drawn with a seriousness that Jack hadn't seen before. She wasn't smiling, and her eyes were clouded with uncertainty. "Jack," she said quietly, stepping into the room, "we need to talk." He looked up at her, his heart heavy with the weight of the situation. "What's wrong?" Lyra hesitated before speaking. "The Resistance has sent us a plan. We have a chance to strike at the heart of the Empire, to destroy their communications, and disrupt their control over this region. But it comes with a price." Jack's pulse quickened. "What kind of price?" "They want you to lead the mission," she said softly. "You're the one who can access their most secure systems. You're the one who can do the most damage. But it means you'll have to cut ties with me, at least for a while. You'll be going undercover, working in the heart of the enemy's operations." Jack's mind spun. He had always considered himself a simple man, someone who kept to himself, who followed orders and kept the peace. But now, he was being asked to lead a mission that could change the course of the galaxy. And the cost? His bond with Lyra, the woman who had claimed him as her husband. "Are you asking me to leave you?" Jack's voice was quiet, but there was a certain finality in it. "To walk away from everything we've started?" Lyra looked away for a moment, her gaze filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "I'm not asking you to abandon me, Jack. But this is the only way. If we want to stop the Empire, If we want to have any chance of a future together, this is what needs to be done." Jack's chest tightened at her words. He had never felt more torn in his life. On one hand, the mission was exactly what he had been trained for: taking down the enemy, striking a blow for humanity's survival. But on the other hand, the price of success was steep. It would mean leaving Lyra, leaving the one person who had become more than just a partner in a mission. She had become someone he cared for deeply, someone he could no longer imagine his life without. He stood up from his chair, pacing across the room. The weight of his decision hung heavily on his shoulders. Was he willing to sacrifice his connection with Lyra for the greater good? Could he really put their future on hold, knowing that it might be their only chance to stop the Empire? "Do you think the Empire will stop at just taking me out?" Jack asked, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of fear. "What if they come for you, Lyra? What if they hurt you to get to me?" Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving his. "I will be fine. I'm not afraid of them. I've survived much worse. But you are the key, Jack. If you go through with this, if you help the resistance, we can stop them. We can protect humanity, and we can protect our future. Together." The words echoed in Jack's mind. Together. It was what Lyra had said from the beginning, the promise that had kept him going even when the stakes seemed too high. But was it worth it? Was their future together worth the sacrifices they both had to make? Jack stopped pacing and turned to face her. "I can't leave you," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I won't leave you." Lyra's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Jack saw the woman beneath the warrior. The vulnerability in her eyes made his heart ache, but it also made his resolve harder. She was right about one thing. The Empire was a threat not just to them, but to everything they cared about, and the mission, as difficult as it was, might be the only way to save their future. "But what about the mission?" Jack asked. "What, if this is the only chance we get to stop them?" Lyra stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "You don't have to choose between me and the mission, Jack. You don't have to abandon your duty, but you have to trust me. Trust that our bond will keep us strong no matter the distance." Jack's mind raced. He had always been a man of action, of decisions. But this was different. This was more than just a simple mission. It was about the future, about their lives, about the galaxy's survival. And for the first time in his life, Jack realized that the mission wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about saving himself and the woman who had already claimed his heart. "I'll do it," Jack said, his voice stronger now. "I'll lead the mission. But I promise you, Lyra, I won't leave you behind. I'll come back, and when I do, we'll face whatever comes next, together." Lyra smiled, a look of pride and love crossing her face. "I knew you would choose the right path, Jack." And with that, Jack made the choice that would shape their future. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without sacrifice. But in that moment, he knew that whatever the outcome, he and Lyra were bound together, not just by destiny, but by a love that would withstand whatever the galaxy threw their way. The days leading up to the mission were filled with a quiet tension. Jack's decision to help the resistance had not been an easy one, but there was no turning back now. The time had come to face the Empire head-on, to take the first real step toward stopping them. His mind was focused, but his heart was heavy with the weight of the decision he had made. Lyra had been his constant companion, helping him prepare for what was to come. Every time he looked at her, he saw the same mixture of determination and trust in her eyes. She had never wavered, never doubted that this was the right course of action. And even though Jack's heart ached at the thought of leaving her side, for the duration of the mission, he knew he had no other choice. The galaxy needed them to succeed. The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate the Empire's communication network, sabotage their systems, and cripple their ability to command their forces. But in reality, it was far more dangerous. They would be going into the heart of enemy territory, where every move would be watched, every step could be their last. Jack stood before the command center, his fingers running over the cold metal of the console as he prepared the last bits of equipment. The silence in the room was broken only by the occasional hum of machinery. He was alone now, as the resistance had already scattered to various positions. Lyra had left to join a separate team, working her way through the Empire's stronghold from the inside. Their paths would cross again soon, but not until the mission was complete. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of a communication device on the table. He picked it up, and the face of one of the resistance leaders appeared on the screen. "Are you ready, Jack?" the leader asked, his face serious. "I'm ready," Jack replied, his voice steady. "Good," the leader said. "We've infiltrated the Empire's communication hub. The next move is yours. Once you breach their firewall, you'll have access to their central systems. It's a one-shot deal. If we fail, the Empire will know we were here, and there will be no turning back." Jack nodded. The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. There would be no second chances. "You've got this," the leader added. "Just be careful. And remember, your life isn't the only one at stake here." With that, the communication ended, and Jack was left standing in the quiet room, alone with his thoughts. He had always been a man who preferred to keep to himself, to work quietly in the background. But now he was the one leading the charge. He was the one who could bring everything crashing down or keep it all intact. The pressure was immense. His fingers flew over the console, inputting the necessary commands to begin the infiltration. The screen before him flickered and shifted, lines of code appearing at a dizzying pace. The Empire's defenses were formidable, but Jack had always been good with systems. He had spent years working with computers and technology, and now all of that experience was coming to a head. As the minutes ticked by, Jack could feel the tension building. His mind raced, focused entirely on the task at hand. He knew that the longer he took, the more likely it was that the Empire would detect him. The stakes had never been higher. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jack entered the final line of code. The firewall broke. The system was in. He had access, but just as he began to take a breath, the alarms went off. Alert. Unauthorized access detected. Jack's heart raced as the screen before him flashed red. He had been spotted. His time was running out. He quickly began navigating through the system, finding the most critical files, the communications, the plans, the orders. It wasn't enough just to disable the system. He had to make sure they couldn't recover from the attack. With every passing second, he could feel the Empire's forces closing in on him. His fingers flew over the keys as he worked to erase every trace of their presence in the system, wiping out critical data that would cripple the Empire's ability to communicate. The system was chaotic now. He was deep inside the Empire's network, and the walls were closing in. But just as he was about to secure the final part of the plan, a warning flashed on the screen. Security breach detected in Sector 7. All units to station. The Empire was on to him. The walls were about to come crashing down. Jack's pulse raced as he made the final adjustments, running the last line of code to lock the system down. As soon as he did, he could hear the sound of footsteps approaching. He had no time to escape through the way he had come. With a deep breath, Jack made his decision. He grabbed the small device the Resistance had given him, a signal jammer, and activated it. The room fell into complete silence. The alarms had stopped. The Empire wouldn't be able to track him now, but Jack wasn't out of danger yet. He knew he had to leave, and fast. The Empire would be closing in on him soon, and he needed to get out of their reach before they could stop him. He sprinted out of the command center, heading for the back corridors that would lead him to safety. He moved swiftly, staying low and avoiding any patrols that might cross his path. His heart pounded in his chest, the adrenaline making every step feel like an eternity. Just as he reached the final door leading to the outside, he heard a voice. "Stop! Right there!" It was too late to turn back now. Jack dashed through the door and into the open. The cold night air hit his face as he sprinted toward the waiting resistance vehicle. His mind was focused on one thing: survival. The vehicle doors opened just as Jack reached it. Lyra was inside, her face tense but relieved as she saw him approach. "Get in!" she shouted. Without hesitation, Jack leaped into the vehicle. As soon as the door slammed shut behind him, the vehicle sped off into the darkness. They were on the move. The mission had been a success, but the battle was far from over. As they sped through the night, Jack glanced over at Lyra. She was looking at him with an expression that held both pride and concern. "We did it," Jack said, his voice breathless. "But they'll be coming after us now." Lyra nodded. "They will. But for now, we've made our mark. We've shown them that humanity won't be controlled. We won't back down." Jack looked out at the horizon, knowing that this was only the beginning. The Empire might have lost a battle, but the war was far from over, and as long as he and Lyra were together, they would keep fighting, no matter the cost. The cold wind howled as Jack and Lyra watched the sun rise over the horizon, the first light of dawn casting a soft glow over the vast, barren land of Olara. The mission had been successful. The Empire had been dealt a significant blow. Jack felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief wash over him, but there was also something else, something he couldn't quite define. It was the feeling of a new beginning, of a path that had opened up before them, one they had never expected to take. The battle was far from over, but this victory had proven something critical. Humanity had power. They were not as weak as the Empire had believed. Jack and Lyra had shown them that they could fight back, that they could stand up for themselves, and that knowledge had sparked a fire in the hearts of those who had once felt hopeless, those who had been living under the shadow of the Empire's rule for far too long. "We did it," Lyra said softly, her voice filled with pride. She stood beside Jack, her hand resting gently on his arm as they took in the view. "We've made our mark on the galaxy. We've given the people a reason to fight." Jack nodded, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. "We've given them hope." But as much as the mission had been a success, Jack knew that this was only the beginning. The Empire would not let this defeat go unpunished. They would regroup, they would retaliate, and they would come for him, for Lyra, and for everyone who had helped them. The threat was still very real. "What now?" Jack asked, breaking the silence between them. "The Empire isn't just going to let us walk away from this." Lyra's expression grew more serious as she turned to face him. "You're right. The Empire will strike back. They'll come for us. They'll come for anyone who helped us." "So what do we do?" Jack asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the question. He had always been someone who preferred to deal with things as they came, but now the future felt uncertain, as though the ground beneath his feet was shifting. "We keep fighting," Lyra said, her voice filled with conviction. "The resistance is stronger now. We've got more support than ever, and we've got each other. Together, we can make the Empire fall." Jack looked at her, the woman who had claimed him as her husband, the woman who had stood by him through the darkest moments. He could see the strength in her eyes, the same strength that had driven her to fight for her people, for her world, and for him. "I'm with you," Jack said quietly but firmly. "Whatever it takes, we'll finish what we started." Lyra smiled, her eyes softening. "We'll do it together." The sound of footsteps behind them broke the moment, and Jack turned to see several resistance fighters approaching. They had been waiting for the all-clear, and now that the mission was over, it was time to regroup and prepare for the next step. But as Jack glanced at the group, he realized something that struck him to his core. The mission had never just been about taking down the Empire. It had been about bringing people together, uniting humanity and the alien factions who had been oppressed for far too long. Jack didn't have the answers yet. The fight was far from over, and there were still many challenges ahead. But he knew that no matter what came next, he was no longer alone. He had Lyra by his side, and together they would lead the charge against the Empire, giving the people of the galaxy a chance at freedom. The days passed quickly as Jack and Lyra worked, with the Resistance to plan their next move. The alliance between humans and the alien factions was growing stronger. More people were joining the cause every day, and the fight against the Empire was taking on a new urgency. But even with all the progress they had made, the Empire's grip was still strong. They would not give up without a fight. Lyra's role had become even more critical. As the heir to a powerful faction, she had knowledge that was vital to the success of their cause. She had always been a leader, but now Jack saw her in a new light. She was not just the woman he had been drawn to. She was a leader, a force of nature, and someone who could unite the galaxy in a way that no one else could. "We need to take the fight to them," Lyra said one day. Her voice filled with determination as they gathered with the Resistance leaders in a hidden base. "We can't keep running. We have to strike at the heart of the Empire, right where it hurts." Jack listened carefully as Lyra outlined their next move. It was risky, but it was their best chance to deal a decisive blow to the Empire. They would strike at the Empire's central stronghold, using the intelligence they had gathered to infiltrate their most secure facilities. The mission would be dangerous, and they would be outnumbered, but they had no other choice. The Empire would not stop until they had crushed the Resistance for good. As the meeting ended, Jack and Lyra walked outside together. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the battlefield that lay ahead. The Resistance had been there, family for so long, but now it was time for them to step into the unknown once more. "I'm ready," Jack said, looking at Lyra. "I'll follow you anywhere." Lyra smiled, her hand finding his. "And I'll follow you, Jack. Together, we can do this. Together, we'll end this war." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey pressing down on them. But even in the face of danger, they knew one thing. No matter what happened, they would face it together. The love that had brought them together, the bond they shared, would be their greatest strength as they faced the final battle. With the future uncertain, but their resolve unshaken, Jack and Lyra prepared for the fight of their lives. The Empire had underestimated them before, but they would not make the same mistake again. They would fight, they would win, and they would create a new beginning, a beginning where freedom, love, and unity ruled the galaxy. And as they walked into the unknown, side by side, Jack knew that no matter what the future held, it would be worth it, because they were together.